Be seated. I will ask the mover of the bill to exercise his right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my government will be a pillar behind every single law-abiding citizen of our country. But from hearing all the opposition members speak, I understand that they're not dismissing the issue of sexual harassment, but by listening to every single one of them speak, they've justified criminals and criminality, which this government condemns heavily. Madam Speaker, I believe that having laws in place which clearly define what sexual harassment is and criminalises the behaviour is a powerful teaching tool. As I previously stated, this government aims to instill fear in people who think sexual harassment will be tolerated in our society. Madam Speaker, I want to begin by commenting on the Leader of the Opposition. The Leader of the Opposition stated that the bill undermines itself due to ambiguity. And I wish to advise the member that Clause 28 states the Cabinet may make regulations for the effective implementations of the regulations stated in the bill. So the Cabinet Office can, in fact, clarify the ambiguity. And I ask that the opposition members refrain from voting against the bill, but to suggest amendments during the committee stage. Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition also mentioned freedom of speech. Is the member trying to say that freedom of speech means freedom to sexually harass people? Freedom of speech does not mean they can sexually harass people, Madam Speaker. The elected member for East End stated that the opposition acknowledges that the issue of sexual harassment exists. But by dismissing the bill, they're dismissing the issue, Madam Speaker. Acknowledged, but dismissed.
I recognize the elected member for East End.
Point of elucidation. Can the member give me an example of where that was stated explicitly?
During the mover of the bill's rebuttal, you cannot ask point of elucidations. Honourable Premier, please.
Yeah. And Madam Speaker, the elected member for Savannah stated that the bill was abandoned in 2013. But Madam Speaker, our progressive governments are not allowed to fix mistakes.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
I recognize the elected member for Savannah.
Madam Speaker, I did not say anything in the debate prior.
Honourable Premier, the elected member did not say that.
Elected
so
member
please...
for Newlands.
Okay.
Sorry.
Please
The elected
continue.
member for Newlands stated that the government abandoned the 2013 bill. But Madam Speaker, governments are supposed to fix mistakes. Just because the past government did not pass the bill does not mean this government is not allowed to pass that bill, Madam Speaker. And the member talked about complaints to RCIPs and that they will be clogged with complaints. Madam Speaker, that is the point of this bill. The government wants people to come forward and support and report the crime. Madam Speaker, the government condemns the fact that the member is discouraging people and victims from making complaints.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. At no point did any members of the opposition in any way at all attempt to encourage the general public to not report sexual harassment. Can the Honourable Premier please withdraw his statement?
Madam Speaker, the member for Savannah did state that this bill, Newlands, the member for Newlands did state that the bill would cause clogging with RCIPS. And the way I see it and the way the government sees it is that that's discouraging people to come forward and report that crime. So I will not be withdrawing that statement, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the member for Prospect stated that 2 months is not enough. Madam Speaker, 2 months is more than enough to formulate a 5-page policy. And the member also stated that the bill is so hard to read. Madam Speaker, the government is not here to teach people how to read. Madam Speaker, any literate person can understand what the bill is saying.
I recognize the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Decorum.
Honourable Premier, please maintain decorum. You may continue your speech.
And Madam Speaker, the member was talking about bigger man, smaller man. I have absolutely no clue what that means. And when the member was asked about evidence to support the fact that 2 months is not enough to formulate a policy, the member submitted a document that had absolutely no evidence on how long it takes to draft a policy. Madam Speaker, member for Georgetown West stated that the age doesn't make a difference in whether or not sexual harassment occurred or did not occur. Madam Speaker, the government believes that when a person sexually harasses a child, their sentence must also be tougher. Madam Speaker,
I recognize the elected member for East End.
Madam Speaker, point of order. Relevancy. Clearly, it is not stated in that bill explicitly that this would be an issue. They've stated it, but they have not actually considered it. The honourable member is stating that they do consider it, but it is not stated in their bill. It is stated, however, that age is considered, but it's not stated explicitly why and how.
Thank you. Honourable Premier, please restate your sentence.
Madam Speaker, as you stated before, the members of the oppositions are only allowed 3 points of order.
Honourable Premier, please continue your speech.
So, Madam Speaker, I want to give an example. When the judicial system considers sexual assault, they do consider the age of the victim. And so we, the government, have taken a similar approach and have decided to consider age as well. And Madam Speaker, multiple members mentioned that sexual harassment is not clearly defined. Madam Speaker, for the opposition to say that the government has not done our research, if they had done their research, they'd know what the definition of sexual harassment is. And, Madam Speaker, and of course they wouldn't know what sexual harassment means because it is not included in our education programs. So, and that is exactly what this bill aims to do. Part 4 of the bill, Madam Speaker, allows the government to clearly articulate to the people of our country, and especially young people, what will be tolerated in our society, and work towards eradicating the appalling criminal offence of sexual harassment. And, Madam Speaker, at the heart of this issue. There are very many emotions felt by the people of our country, and especially those who have been personally affected by sexual harassment. And the government recognises this fact, that this is an issue and that it must be addressed. But for the opposition to blatantly dismiss the issue by dismissing the bill is absolutely appalling. Madam Speaker, the opposition has constantly attacked the government and its efforts to eradicate sexual harassment from our offices, our schools, and our streets. But we, the government, have proven to the people watching these proceedings that it is our side that puts the people's priorities first, and that the opposition puts petty politics first. Madam Speaker, the people watching these proceedings all have drawn their own conclusion. A conclusion that the government puts law-abiding citizens first and the opposition puts the interests of criminals first. Madam Speaker, I get it. The opposition does have a propensity to oppose. But to oppose, you must have a clear and a credible alternative, which the opposition clearly doesn't. Madam Speaker, never did I hear one single clear alternative to the issue being discussed today. No solutions, no alternatives.
Honourable Premier, your time is up. Please conclude.
Okay. Madam Speaker, I want to conclude by saying that the time has come to act. My job as Premier is to serve the people of our country. And one thing that politicians and the oppositions need to remember is that the people are our bosses. The Caymanian people are our bosses, and right now it doesn't seem like the opposition is listening to the people of our country. And my job, and this government's job, is to make schools safer, our offices safer, and our streets safer. While this government is taking responsibility, the opposition is hiding from responsibility, and I'd like to end there. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Sexual Harassment Bill 2022 be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The bill is
Madam Speaker, can I have a division, please?
Madam Clerk, please take a division.
Honorable Shankar Paul Raj.
Aye.
Honorable Elizabeth Thomas.
Aye.
Honorable Kira Bodden.
Aye.
Honorable Chanel Martinez.
Aye.
Honorable Deshanti McLaughlin Richards.
Aye.
Honorable Michael Glidden.
Aye.
Honorable Charles Player.
Aye.
Honorable Sienna Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Juan Leon Carlos.
Aye.
Ms. Janae Whitaker.
Aye.
Mr. White McLaughlin.
Aye.
Honorable George Green.
No.
Mr. Chad Powell.
No.
Ms. Hannah Bodden.
No.
Honorable Rion Porter.
No.
Ms. Thalia Clark.
No.
Ms. Janelle Cahoon.
No.
Ms. Honora Moyton.
No.
Mr. Jacob Kelly Johnson.
No.
The result of the division is 11 ayes and 8 noes. The ayes have it. The bill is now deemed to have been read a second time. We will now go into committee to consider the bill. Please be seated. The House is now in committee. With the leave of the House, may I assume that, as usual, we should authorize the Honorable Attorney General to correct minor errors and such in this bill. Would the clerk please state the bill and read the clauses?
The Sexual Harassment Bill 2022. Clause 1, short title and commencement. Clause 2, interpretation. Clause 3, conduct that amounts to the offense of sexual harassment. Clause 4, penalties in respect of sexual harassment. Clause 5, offense of intimidating a complainant. Clause 6, offense of making a false complaint. Clause 7, duty of employer to formulate sexual harassment policy. Clause 8, duty of employer to report complaints of sexual harassment. Clause 9, additional duties of the employer. Clause 10, liability of employer for acts of sexual harassment. Clause 11, offense of intimidating an employee or third party.
Are there any questions on the clauses?
Yes, Madam Chair. Part 2, Clause 3, subsection 2 and 3. The opposition is asking if the government could remove 3B from the bill, as it directly contradicts with 2C. You cannot say must take into consideration the relationship between the complainant and the respondent and then turn around and say the civil partnership must be taken into consideration. Once again, the opposition is asking if the government could remove 3B from the bill as it directly contradicts with 2C.
Can the member please restate his amendment?
The opposition is asking if the government could remove Part 2, Clause 3, subsection 2, and so remove 3B from subsection 3 as it contradicts with 2C. Part 2, Clause 2, subsection 2C and 3B. Yes. Write it down. You have to write it down. You need to.
Madam Speaker, to correct that error, the government would like to remove Clause 2, subclause C.
Thank you. My next question is for the All right, my last question actually is for the Minister of Education and the Minister of Finance. For the Minister of Education, has there been a grading criterion or criteria assigned to this course in life skills as yet? And if so, can we see it?
Yes.
And my follow-up question is, what would deem a student sufficient enough to pass this course? And once again, I'd like to see the criteria that you guys have assigned.
I don't believe it's a course that would need to be passed, but it's a course that we put into place for education purposes, and that is all.
And it's mandatory, correct?
Pardon?
It's mandatory for all
Yes,
students?
it is
Thank you.
mandatory.
And for the Minister of Finance, are there funds available to facilitate this new course in life skills? And where are the funds coming from?
Could you please restate your question?
Are there funds available to facilitate this new course in life skills, and where are the funds coming from?
For your question, we're not employing new teachers, but rather the course or the health course that's already in place, we will be simply adding in the topic.
When you add on the topic, you're going to need more papers, more books, more information. Where they're going to get stuff from? I'm not saying teachers in general, but where are the funds coming from to facilitate this new program?
In your question, again, the government provides schools with the necessary products or, the necessary stuff to create this. There's also something called PowerPoint, which you could use if you want to, But in terms of the funds, in that sense of the question, again, when it comes to this topic of discussion, it would simply be taught. And sometimes, if the teachers would like to do worksheets and stuff, the school is provided with paper, ink, and so forth.
Madam Speaker, can I interject?
Yes, you may.
In regards to the question the honourable member from Georgetown South posed, government has a surplus in which available funds is ready to use. With this surplus, in my opinion, previous governments had money to spend on devising a plan for the cruise port, which cost $10 million. And then they also had money to provide funding for the iguana culling, which was $6 million. So if we can provide funding for those areas, we can also provide funding to revise the life skills course in the public institutions, and also bring in private institutions to discuss with them the importance of teaching our youth the importance of sexual harassment. Thank you.
Thank you for answering my question. I'm sorry, my last question is, the opposition is asking the government to change the time that employers must report to the RCIPS from 2 business days to 24 hours.
Aye. Yes, we agree.
Are there any more questions on the clauses?
Yes, Madam Chair. The opposition is asking that Part 3, Clause 2 be redefined, as there was some cause for confusion. They took out all of Clause 2? Never mind, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Are there any more questions on the clauses? If not, I will put the question. The question is that clauses 1 to 11 does stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Clauses 1 to 11 stand part of the bill.
Clause 12. Provisions of this Act to be taught in educational institutions. Clause 13. Duty of educational institutions to implement sexual harassment policy. Clause 14. Course on life skills. Clause 15. Duty of owner or operator of an educational institution to report complaints of sexual harassment. Clause 16. Duty of owner or operator of an educational institution to safeguard complainant. Clause 17. Penalty or act of sexual harassment committed against a student by an owner or employee of an educational institution. Clause 18. Offense of intimidating a student.
Are there any questions on the clauses? If not, I will put the question. The question is that clauses 12 to 18 stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Clauses 12 to 18 stand part of the bill.
Clause 19, Establishment and Constitution of Tribunal. Clause 20, Jurisdiction of Tribunal to hear certain matters. Clause 21, Appointment of members and procedure of Tribunal. Clause 22, Awards of Tribunal. Clause 23, Effect of award or decision. Clause 24, Appeal. Clause 25, Offenses in relation to attendance at hearing.
Are there any questions on the clauses?
Yes, Madam Chair. Part 5, Clause 19, subsection A. Are the tribunals going to be appointed full-time or part-time? If part-time, how does the government plan to continuously find tribunals?
Madam Speaker, they will be employed full-time.
Are there any more questions on the clauses?
Yes, Madam Chair. Part 5, Clause 19, subsection C. For the other 3 members who are selected from amongst the opinion of the Cabinet are qualified to be a member, is there a certain criteria? How does the government plan to eliminate bias, and will the 3 members remain constantly, or will they be switched?
Could you please restate your question?
Part 5, Clause 19, subsection C. For the other 3 members who are selected amongst who are the opinion of the Cabinet are qualified to be a member, is there a certain criteria? How does the government plan to eliminate bias, and will these members be constantly switched or remain?
There will be a criteria put in place to eliminate that possibility of there being a bias.
And will they be constant, or will they be switched around every quarter year?
They'll be switched around.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions on the clauses? If not, I will put the question. The question is that clauses 19 to 25 does stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Clauses 19 to 25 stand part of the bill.
Clause 26, Review of Sexual Harassment Policy. Clause 27, Amendment of Schedules. Clause 28, Regulations. Clause 29, Act binds the Crown.
Are there any questions on the clauses? If not, I will put the question. The question is that clauses 26 to 29 stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Clauses 26 to 29 stand part of the bill.
Schedule 1, Appointment of Sexual Harassment Tribunal. Schedule 2, Procedure for making complaints and for investigations and hearings by tribunal.
Are there any questions on the schedules? If not, I will put the question. The question is that Schedules 1 and 2 stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Schedules 1 and 2 stand part of the bill.
A bill for an act to criminalize sexual harassment, to require employers and educational institutions to formulate a sexual harassment policy, and for incidental and connected purposes.
The question is that the title does stand part of the bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The title stands part of the bill. The question now is that the bill be reported to the House. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The bill will accordingly be reported to the House. House now resumes. Please be seated.
Report on bills. The Sexual Harassment Bill, 2022.
I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I am to report that the bill shortly entitled the Sexual Harassment Bill 2022 was considered by a committee of the whole House and was passed with amendments.
I now call on the Honourable Premier to move for the suspension of Standing Order 47.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move the motion for the suspension of Standing Order 47 to enable the Sexual Harassment Bill 2022 to be read a third time in this sitting.
The question is that Standing Order 47 be suspended to enable the Sexual Harassment Bill 2022 to be read a third time in this sitting. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it.
Third reading. The Sexual Harassment Bill, 2022.
I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Madam Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled the Sexual Harassment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and pass.
The question is that a bill shortly entitled the Sexual Harassment Bill 2022 be given a third reading and pass. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. The bill shortly entitled the Sexual Harassment Bill has been given a third reading and is passed.
Private Member's Motion Number 1 of 2022. Restriction on high-cost housing and implementation of a land and housing purchase license for non-Caymanians, to be moved by the elected member for Georgetown South.
I recognize the elected member for Georgetown South.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move private member motion number 1 of 2022, restricting on high-cost housing and implementation of a land and housing purchase license for non-Caymanians, which reads as follows. Whereas the Cayman Islands population and housing census 2020 states that there's a high demand for affordable housing for Caymanians, and whereas some 10 years later, there is still a demand for as well as shortage of affordable housing for Caymanians, and whereas the cost of housing has increased significantly, partly due to the purchase of high-cost homes by foreign nationals, or the building of high-cost homes to cater to foreign nations. And whereas foreign nationals oftentimes outbid local Caymanians for affordable homes, and whereas there are currently no restrictions on foreign ownership of housing, and whereas the current property market in the Cayman Islands is open market offering unrestricted competition for buyers and sellers, be it therefore resolved that this Honourable Youth Parliament considers implementation of restriction on the number of high-cost housing that can be developed on an annual basis. Be it therefore further resolved that this Honourable Youth Parliament considers implementation of a licence programme in order to qualify and register any individual with the exemption of Caymanians who wish to own land or housing in the Cayman Islands. Be it therefore further resolved that this Honourable Youth Parliament considers amending the relevant acts that only Caymanians or those individuals who have obtained a licence can purchase land or housing in the Cayman Islands.
Private Member's Motion Number 1 of 2022 has been duly moved. Is there a seconder to the motion? I recognize the elected member for Northside.
Madam Speaker, I beg to second Private Member's Motion 1 of 2022.
The motion has been duly moved and seconded. Does the mover wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm sure we all remember the iconic phrase, Houston, we have a problem. Well, Cayman, we have a problem. The problem is, Madam Speaker, Caymanians are tired of can't find place live, Tired of can't find land buy, tired to see these rent prices competing against gas prices, tired to see these housing developments going up faster than my blood pressure. Madam Speaker, we tired. Does the government not realize how many young people are migrating to other countries just for a better life, to afford a home, or just to buy land? Madam Speaker, as the great Nelson Mandela said, the greatest glory in living lies in not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. We as the House of Parliament have fell short when it comes on to putting Caymanians first. Madam Speaker, the cries of the Caymanian people have become so loud that we've become deaf to it. Madam Speaker, the problems of Caymanians trying to get houses have become so much that we've become blind to it. It is time to address these problems accordingly and pick ourselves up as a nation. Madam Speaker, we used to grow generations on Caymanian-owned land and houses. Now we are growing them on foreigners' land, paying them money to live in our own country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, for any member of the government that stands up and says we are promoting discrimination or bias does not have the Caymanian interest at heart. We have opened our doors and welcomed foreign investors to come in and claim our land as their own. Far, far too long. They can say we are discriminating, but at the end of the day, when all is said and done, foreign investors can go back home, but where will the Caymanian go? Madam Speaker, I am not saying that we should stop foreign investors from coming in and developing our lands. However, there needs to be some type of restriction. We've given them an inch, and they've taken 7 miles. Madam Speaker, it is the basic human rights that every Caymanian in the Cayman Islands has access to shelter. Why are we neglecting this basic human rights? Madam Speaker, I ask to beg the question again. If not Caymanians, then who? This motion is long overdue and necessary in safeguarding Caymanians' ability to provide for their children and compete in real estate. Oftentimes, smaller island nations that thrive because of things like foreign investment, development goes unchecked and underlooked, resulting in gentrification for protecting the Caymanian economy, creating a self-sustaining environment that functions without the constant influence of foreign investors. Madam Speaker, the Caymanian Islands dollar is one of the highest currencies in the world. So why is it that we are still being outbid by foreign investors in our own land, in our own market? Madam Speaker, this free market is too free. High cost housing is causing segregation in the Cayman Islands. How many Caymanians have land in the shores? How many Caymanians have house and land on South Sun Road? Madam Speaker, you can't feed dog and donkey the same thing. Madam Speaker, this is the House of Parliament, not immigration. We can't keep accepting people. We need to put young people at the front of our forethoughts. How can anyone expect a young person after paying $200,000 in education to come home and is now making minimum wage job due to lack of experience be expected to own land or house in the Cayman Islands? Madam Speaker, I urge every member of the opposition and the government to put the people of the Cayman Islands first. Listen to us and decide and make a decision that will truly benefit the Cayman Islands. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House prices in the Cayman Islands have nearly doubled in the past 5 years. During July of 2016, the average value of a home was $520,025 based on figures from Sariba. Using additional statistics from Sariba, Cayman Islands Real Estate Brokers
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, point of order. Can I please have the documentation for this?
Madam Speaker, I can provide documentation.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, please continue your speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I was saying, using additional statistics from Cereba, we can see that just 5 years later, the average price of a home sold in the Cayman Islands as of 2021 sat at over 847,000 KYD. That's an approximate increase of 1.6 times in the cost of housing over only 5 years. Madam Speaker, according to the Economic and Statistics Office, the average Caymanian earns 66,977 KYD a year as of January 2022. With this in mind, how can the average Caymanian simply afford these ridiculously high house prices? Housing, like health insurance, and to some
I
extent...
recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Point of elucidation.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, do you give way?
I give way.
Madam Speaker, is the Honourable Leader of the Opposition implying that Caymanians are not rich enough to afford these housing, like all over the Cayman Islands?
Madam Speaker, I think what I'm implying is actually far more dire than my honourable member is suggesting. I'm implying that Caymanians with a globally high average salary cannot afford the ridiculously high house prices on the island.
Please continue your speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, as I was saying, housing, like health insurance and to some extent education, has fallen into the free market on these islands. Now, this is usually a good thing in a modern economy. However, because of the lack of land on these islands, especially Grand Cayman, because of its far larger population, there is now an inelastic demand for housing. Inelastic demand for housing is defined as one where a change in price does not significantly impact demand for that product. This means that no matter how high the cost of housing, people will always need homes. That's a problem because people will pay anything. Madam Speaker, the many banking institutions in the Cayman Islands have unarguably helped Caymanians in purchasing homes as well as assisting with certain mortgages and other financial programs. However, with the continued appreciation in the cost of housing, the banks are becoming less and less able to provide mortgages. The private housing market has been fueled and expanded by this, and the need for housing is only growing with our ever-expanding population.
I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Point of order, Miss. Can the Leader of Opposition provide information relating to banks not being able to provide enough mortgages?
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, can you provide the documentation to support your statement?
I cannot provide documentation to support my statement. However, what I can say is that regarding
Honorable Minister of Education.
Can the member please retract his statement then?
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, can you please rephrase your statement or retract your statement?
I will rephrase my statement, Madam Speaker. Or maybe explain better. You see, the thing is that the average Caymanian cannot afford houses in the Cayman Islands because the banks are not willing to provide a mortgage that is approximately 10 times out of their salary requirement, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Minister of Education, please be seated. Honorable Leader of the Opposition, please continue your speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To sum up the question that was asked, I cannot provide exact data. However, I think it's a pretty reasonable assumption to make that banks are not going to be willing to provide mortgages for 10 times the average salary of a particular individual. Now, continuing with my point, the unregulated mortgage market, which I mentioned earlier, has allowed the creation of a form of home values arm race, if you will, between private individuals. The higher the value of the property, the higher the interest rates and payments and potential profit. This means that the continued competition in the housing market in these islands will continue to raise the price of housing. Madam Speaker, do you realise that this government allows a select few private individuals and entities to regulate one of the most important industries in the Cayman Islands? Madam Speaker, this industry employs a vast number of Caymanians, from construction all the way up to managing, buying and selling of housing and other forms of real estate. Let me just make myself clear. The private sector regulates this market, which is out of control, the market being the evaluation of the cost of homes. Madam Speaker, a thing to note would be that we are very much alone in this. Internationally speaking, many other nations do not allow this. For instance, India. One of the largest global economies, India, do not. The Indian system allows foreign nationals of non-Indian origin the ability to acquire or transfer immovable property in India on a lease not exceeding 5 years. Another great example would be the Chinese policy. Even tougher. Foreigners are allowed to purchase property in China only on strict conditions that they have studied or worked in China for at least 1 year on a residence permit. In addition to this, foreigners are only allowed to own one residential property, and the property can only be used for dwelling purposes. This is a vast contrast to the Cayman system. Now, I hear you say, these are two huge, gigantic superpowers with vast expanses of land and population. So what about a smaller place like the Cayman Islands? Well, the Crown dependency of the Bailiwick of Guernsey has a similar policy to the one we wish to implement. To summarise, the Guernsey housing market is divided into two categories. One open and local. Open market and local market. Anyone may own or...
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, your time is up.
May I have 30 seconds to summarise?
You may.
The Cayman system we wish to implement with this motion follows a similar system, however is different in a few key areas. Properties on our new local market will not be able to be purchased freely and may only be used as residence by entitled individuals, such as Caymanians and permanent residence holders. The open market system, which, however, we wish to retain with zoning laws, is open for every and anyone to purchase. Madam Speaker, to conclude, may I just ask you, what is wrong with this government? Do they not understand the need to regulate this market before it's too late? The need for housing has never been higher on these islands. If this motion is not put forward, then the cost of housing will continue to spiral out of control and out of reach for Caymanians. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honourable Minister of Tourism and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak on the private member motion number 1 of 2022, restriction on high-cost housing and implementation of a land and housing purchase license for non-Caymanians. Madam Speaker, I acknowledge that there is a limited supply of affordable housing in our community, and I believe that the opposition has good intentions. I'll give them that. But it is obvious that they haven't thought this through. The fact that the opposition believes that to resolve this situation with affordable housing by the implementation of restrictions on a number of high-cost housing that can be developed on an annual basis is ridiculous. Madam Speaker, as the Minister of Tourism, I am proud of the progress that the country has made on the path to recovery in our tourism sector. We have begun welcoming back stayover tourists and will be welcoming cruise tourism back to our shores March 21st. While we have made great strides in our economic recovery, the last thing that the members of this honorable House should be considering is endangering this recovery by placing restrictions on development. The construction industry and financial service industry has supported our recovery over the past year and a half, Madam Speaker. And while we have begun welcoming back visitors to our shores, it will take time for the tourism industry to recover. Placing major restrictions on one of the industries which are driving our recovery will be foolhardy. Madam Speaker, in reading the opposition's motion, it appears that the opposition needs a lesson on the law of supply and demand, and I'll be more than happy to enlighten them. According to Investopedia.com, the law of supply and demand dictates the equilibrium price of a property. A low supply of housing inventory may drive prices up, which is what tends to result in bidding wars. A specific property may be in demand by multiple parties who all try to outbid each other by increasing their purchase price offer. The bidding war ends when the seller accepts one of the offers, which is then also removes a unit from the available supply. When there is a high demand for properties in a particular city or state, combined with the lack of supply of quality properties, the prices of houses tend to rise. As you can see from this basic law of economics, the restrictions proposed by the opposition will have the opposite effect of the intended purpose. By restricting the number of high-cost housing that can be developed on an
I
annual
recognize
basis.
the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do appreciate the lesson on basic supply and demand economics. However, my honourable member has failed to express the point of order. I do appreciate the lesson in basic supply and demand economics. However, my honourable member has failed to mention inelastic demand, which is what we experience here in the Cayman Islands regarding housing. How does that play into your summary of the supply and demand of housing in the Cayman Islands?
Point of order, is that a point of elucidation because you did ask me a question? Not a point of order. So if it is a point of order, I decline. Can I?
You may continue your speech.
Madam Speaker, as you can see from this basic law of economics, the restrictions proposed by the opposition will have the opposite effect on the intended purpose by restricting the number of high-cost housing that can be developed on an annual basis. They will have the causes of prices of them to increase. Madam Speaker, I would like to ask the opposition if they have put any thought into the cost of the proposed house purchase license. Because if a person can afford to purchase a $10 million home, the cost of a license would have to be significant to discourage someone who could already afford to invest $10 million into a property. Madam Speaker, I want to point out that many Caymanians who own properties have benefited from the increase in property values that have occurred as a result of foreign investors participating in Cayman's property market. If foreign investors are blocked from participating in our property market, we risk preventing Caymanian property owners from realizing the full benefit of the increase in the value of their property. Madam Speaker, there are many other alternatives to resolve this situation other than implementing restrictions that will affect our economy. Madam Speaker, what we should be doing is increasing the number of developers interested in building affordable housing in our community. We can do this by offering incentives such as duty waivers or rebates, reducing planning fees, or expedited planning approvals specifically for the development of affordable housing. These incentives would not only encourage developers to construct affordable housing projects, but would also serve to reduce the cost of construction, making the housing more affordable. Madam Speaker, I would like to point out to the venerable opposition that there is already a mechanism put into place in form of an infrastructure fund under the development and planning regulations, whose purpose is to provide.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. My honourable member states there are already policies in place. However, can you therefore explain the ridiculous and continuing increase in the cost of housing in the Cayman Islands?
Point of order again, is that a question or a point of order? You're asking me a question. If it is a question, I will decline. Thank you.
Honourable Leader, okay. You may continue your speech.
Madam Speaker, these development and planning regulations, whose purpose is to provide funds for the development of roads, affordable housing, and other infrastructure in our country. Madam Speaker, the fees which drive the funds are paid as a part of the planning application processes. These fees have a tiered structure with the areas which incur the highest fees coinciding the same area in which many of the high-cost developments are constructed. Madam Speaker, while I can agree with the intentions of the opposition's motion, I cannot support the opposition's proposed solution. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Minister of Financial Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is obvious my colleagues on the bench of the opposition have good intentions, but they do not understand the problem. They move to implement restrictions on the number of high-cost housing that can be developed on an annual basis. What exactly are they saying in this regard? Are they saying that people should buy expensive pieces of land and put cheap houses on it? What will that achieve? Madam Speaker, would we want to see sharks on 7 Mile Beach after people have spent millions of dollars for the property because we put a restriction that you cannot build expensive houses? Putting restrictions on the number of high-cost housing obviously shows the lack of understanding as to what the problem is, because there are other types of classes of people buying these expensive properties. This does not allow any space for Caymanians to compete for these properties. If a Caymanian can't afford those high-cost property homes, then they're not looking for lower-cost housing. Furthermore, the properties where the expensive houses are being built are the places where the land is already expensive. So no one is going to use that land and put low-cost housing. Madam Speaker, as I move on to my next point.
I recognize the elected member from East End.
Point of order. Is there evidence to prove this claim, physical evidence, please?
What claim?
The claim that these high-end properties are already on a high-priced land. I'm sure, as many of us know, there are properties in East End, for example, that would be on quote-unquote low-cost land, but are built into high-cost developments.
Honorable Minister, do you have the supporting documentation?
I do not have the supporting document, but it is quite obvious that
I therefore ask this honorable member to retract their statement. Thank you.
Honorable member, please retract your statement and continue your speech.
I retract my statement. Madam Speaker, as I move on to my next point, I beg to ask my colleagues on the bench of the opposition, what is going to be achieved by licensing foreign nationals on ownership of housing? They are not saying that they're going to stop foreign nationals. It appears that the motion is also to qualify an individual who wishes to own land or houses in the Cayman Islands. Isn't it that Cayman operates as a free market? If the government restricts or rather qualifies persons that can buy property, that will reduce the value of property and disenfranchise the Caymanian. The question is, what is going to be the criteria used to qualify someone to buy a piece of property? Who makes this decision? And how will an objective qualification be achieved? Madam Speaker, they have also suggested that building more expensive homes has made the price of home ownership increase, which is detrimental to Caymanians. However, that is not necessarily the case, as Caymanians are the ones developing those homes and selling them for a profit. Madam Speaker, the cost of housing is significantly increasing, partly due to the purchase of building of high-cost homes to cater to foreign nationals is not what has raised the cost of homes. What has raised the cost of homes is simply the economics of supply and demand. There are not enough houses being built to satisfy the need for housing. As a result, there are not enough houses, therefore the prices are higher. Madam Speaker, what needs to be looked at is why there are not enough houses. Is it because the developers are not incentivized to develop affordable housing? Or is it because the population is increasing too fast? Based on the preliminary 2021 census report published, non-Caymanians were counted at 25,097. As it shows, the supply may not be enough to satisfy the demand for those persons wanting to buy a home, and therefore it means that the sale will go to the highest bidder in most cases. Therefore, the main cause of the problem is the increase in population, and the opposition is not offering a solution for that. They are simply saying that they will license foreign nationals to own land or housing. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, based on the Immigration Act and regulations of the Cayman Islands in relation to the permanent residency regime, persons are encouraged to purchase property as more points are allotted based on property ownership. Therefore, based on supply and demand, naturally prices will be higher if the demand outweighs the supply. So licensing the foreign nationals when buying a home is not going to change that. Madam Speaker, unfortunately, while we sympathize and understand the challenges, this motion obviously was not well thought out, and we cannot support this motion. I agree that there has to be some action taken to protect young Caymanians so that they can afford property in their own country. That should be the aspiration for our country. People want to feel that they can own a part of the country that they live in. Madam Speaker, as the Minister for Investments, it is recognized that foreign nationals have been a part of the success and prosperity throughout the history of the Cayman Islands. Foreign investment has stimulated economic growth as well as human capital development, amongst other things. Therefore, Madam Speaker, let us not bite the hand that feeds us, as the saying goes. Any funding, such as stamp duty, that is taken away from the government's...
Honorable Minister, your time is up.
May I request an extension?
You have an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you. Any funding, such as stamp duty, that is taken away from the government's coffers may leave the government with no other option but to impose direct taxation, as the government will need other revenue streams to make up the funding lost to support the various services and programs of this country. This will make the Cayman Islands no different from any other country and perhaps no longer as attractive. Therefore, Madam Speaker, while our government will look for a real solution, this private member motion number 1 of 2022 is not a real solution, and therefore we cannot support this motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for East End.
I would again like to thank Madam Speaker for allowing me the opportunity of speaking today. Within this presentation, I will be highlighting the positive aspects which create this motion. I will be highlighting the concerns that many of our local people have concerning the lack of affordable housing across the span of our communities, from professionals such as doctors, lawyers, accountants, and other tradespersons or respective employees. Susie Orman, a credible financial advisor, states that owning a home is the keystone to wealth, both financial affluence and emotional security. The opposition truly believes that this statement not only fully encapsulates the Caymanian view, but globally most people's view on owning a property in 2022. And I'm sure that many of the people here today sitting in here will also agree with this statement. As a Caymanian, I have seen firsthand that there are multiple properties which have been on the market for what many would consider as unreasonable prices, which also do not suit the average income bracket, as one of my honorable members have previously stated, of many Caymanians. According to the Cayman Compass in 2021, the price of the average two-bed home in such developments, Cocoa and Mystic Retreat, sitting in Georgetown, was a relatively...
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, point of order. Can I have the documentation of this, please?
Yes, you may.
Elected member, please continue your speech.
Thank you. As I was saying, these developments were at a relatively affordable rate of $181,000 in 2013, the low point price rise for the Cayman housing market. And by last year, average sales price tipped the $300,000 barrier in those developments for the first time ever. There are currently two-bed homes in...
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, I would like to raise a point of order on repetition, as these are two pieces of evidence presented by the leader of the opposition and the elected member of East End They're the exact same piece of paper and therefore repetition.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you please sit down. Elected Member for East End, please continue your
Thank you. For the first time, these developments have tipped the $300,000 barrier, KYD, for the first time. And there are currently two two-bed homes in these developments that reach from $375,000 KYD to $415,000 respectively, end quote. This is also from the Cayman Compass. While some may argue this just to be an increase in value, many would consider this to be far from the truth. According to the Cereba, the average house price, as previously stated by one of my members, is $847,000 KYD, which is out of range for many Caymanians of many professions, and it would be interesting to see the results of the 2021 census, as it will most likely reveal more evidence to illuminate this issue. I myself know of many Caymanians who, as much as they love our island, are migrating due to the fact that they cannot find affordable housing on their own island. This is known as brain drain, when intelligent people move or migrate from their home country to another due to not being able to afford living there or be able to get a job that pays in relation to their intellect. And because of this, we created a motion that best fits their needs, as we are meant to make sure that they come first. We as the opposition and them as the government are meant to make sure that the Caymanian people are put first as our priority. While our islands are a part of a free market where goods and services are regulated, self-regulated, we have recognized that the scale has been tipped in favor of foreign investments rather than being at equilibrium with our people, which should be the ultimate goal, balance. Both parties here today are aware of the financial benefits that stamp duty has to offer our community. There is no disputing that whatsoever. However, we are calling to attention the overall imbalance that has been overlooked for the past 5 to 8 years. I'm referring to the fourth whereas statement in this motion. Even those individuals who are benefiting significantly from the now luxury real estate market acknowledge this imbalance. In the recent article of the New York Times, Mr. Bevell of Bevell Real Estate has stated that about 70% of his sales values come from foreigners. This is no coincidence, and this completely proves that real estate prices today are out of reach for many Caymanians. In our motion, we refer to a licensing program that will ensure the development, that overpriced developments are being more controlled by the government, and that the amount of land that is being developed will be able to be avoided to avoid an increase on overpriced developments, and will also highlight who is eligible for lower to no stamp duty, which refers to our first be it therefore resolved that statement. Madam Speaker, this imbalance reminds me of a book. Have you ever heard of Animal Farm? It's written by anti-communist George Orwell, and in this book he states that all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. It is almost as if this book highlights the issue that we are having today within our own community. Those with more money are considered to be of higher importance, are put on a completely different playing field when finding a home. It should also be noted and considered that by this government that this motion ensures the option of affordable housing for Caymanians, and this last be it therefore resolved that statement confirms this. As one of my members have previously stated, the government has a constitutional obligation to ensure that all Caymanians have a roof over their head. I'm sure that many of the people sitting here today might have seen the post that states, "It is not paradise when our locals cannot afford to live here." Posted on the Instagram account, Everything345 in 2020. This was 2 years ago before the pandemic. In its explicit meaning, it highlights the significance of losing our people to foreign investment and refers to our first whereas statement. We suggest that the government will consider our motion due to the fact that we as the opposition are representing our people's opinions and reality. Our people want a government who chooses them, not international investment, not money. And our motion shows that to them. We are hoping that the government acknowledge the positive outcomes that come from this motion if it is to be passed. Thank you, and I yield the rest of my time.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for Savannah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As my fellow members of the opposition have stated before me, there are several reasons why our motion will prove beneficial to our people. Within this speech, I will be highlighting how the opposition's motion entitled, quote, Restriction on High-Cost Housing and Implementation of a Land and Housing Purchase License for Non-Caymanians will, 1, help to make more homes available in an affordable price range for Caymanians, and 2, ensure less financial strain on the Needs Assessment Unit. Firstly, Madam Speaker, through the implementation of the Land and Housing Purchase License for Non-Caymanians, we will be able to create a local market in the Cayman Islands to reduce foreign competition. Since, in the opposition's motion, the fifth whereas states, and I quote, and whereas there are currently no restrictions on foreign ownership of housing. Madam Speaker, the opposition's aim is not to discourage the purchasing of land or housing by foreign nationals. However, as the voice of the people, we are obligated to discuss these issues. One of them being the fact that Caymanians are often outbid by foreign nationals for housing in Cayman.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, point of order. Can I have some documentation of this?
Yes, Madam Speaker, she may.
Elected member, please continue your speech.
In one instance, this is supported by a report from Ms. Jackie Doak, President of Business Development at DART. The report comes from a New York Times article speaking only on the Cayman Islands. It says, quote, Ms. Doak said about 70% of buyers with her agency are foreign. I will repeat, Ms. Doak said about 70% of buyers with her agency are foreign. Let that sink in. Madam Speaker, on account of the purchase license, which the Deputy Leader of the Opposition will further elaborate on, the homes that will be built in the areas on the local market cannot exceed the sale price of around 400,000 KYD. Although, I would like to point out that this figure is not concrete, but one that can be changed. Therefore, this will aid in the creation of affordable homes in the Cayman Islands for Caymanians. To restate, the opposition's introduction of a local market through the Land and Housing Purchase License will protect our Caymanians from foreign competition. Secondly, Madam Speaker, I would like the government to imagine this. A single mother earns an average salary, which is reported to be, by averagesalarysurvey.com, around 66,977 KYD annually. This woman is currently struggling to find a home in her price range, considering the average price of a house sold in the Cayman Islands, reported by the Cayman Compass, was 847,000 KYD. Also, according to the Cayman Compass, quote, banks are now generally asking for higher down payments, usually around 15%, making it even tougher to climb the first rung on the housing ladder. Madam Speaker, does the government not realize that middle and lower class Caymanians will not be able to meet the down payment alone? Caymanians such as this mother will have to get a loan from another institution. Now, Madam Speaker, that would just make things worse. Madam Speaker, because if we factor in interest rates and qualifications, most Caymanians would not be able to qualify for loans or even keep up with payments. And Madam Speaker, one bank is not going to assist with the down payment because they would then be fully financing these persons for their property. Now referring back to the scenario, the mother has to take care of 2 kids. Supposedly she is struggling to make ends meet because she has mouths to feed and not enough money to do so, and feels forced to turn to alternative means of financial aid. Nevertheless, Madam Speaker, the opposition realizes that there is an institution in place, the Needs Assessment Unit, to deliver financial assistance to qualifying Caymanians who are unable to support themselves or their families. However, our motion has the objective of keeping Caymanians away from this institution. We believe that if Caymanians are buying homes, fewer of them would need housing assistance from NAU. In closing, Madam Speaker, this motion will help to make more homes available in an affordable price range for Caymanians, and it will result in less financial strain on the Needs Assessment Unit. So we ask the government to consider our motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member for West Bay North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Up until this day, I had some heavy thought on this motion the opposition presented. When I first read it, I was against it, simply because I misread it to think that the request for license was for Caymanians. And at the time, I thought to myself, okay, opposition has lost their minds. Consider the fact that we as Caymanians are struggling to purchase property in our islands. Now again, when I read over the motion, I thought to myself, okay, with what the opposition is asking for, the first half of this motion, although it supports the reason for what they're asking, primarily relates to, in my opinion, sustainable development in terms of putting a restriction on high-cost development. I felt that that part of the motion would have better benefited the opposition if the topic was on sustainable development for our islands. However, again, when I came to the second part of the motion, I thought to myself, would a license be the right solution, meaning the only solution to resolve the issue that is being presented in this House today? In my honest opinion, no. It is not the solution, but it can be part of the solution. Now with this, Madam Speaker, I've listened to some of the points made by the respective members of government, and with that, I can agree with them. We have to take in consideration the factors of our economy. For instance, what ideas opposition has to supplement what will be lost in terms of the revenue the government gains from development. But with that question, I'd like to pose this question to the government to say, in a sense, okay, wouldn't this be the right opportunity to review our structures of economy, to take as a chance to diversify our economies of tourism, finance, banking, development? Because, Madam Speaker, at the present time, our current structure of economy is not sustainable to our islands. It's beneficial to today, but my question is, what about tomorrow? So with that, I pose that a part solution to assist with the high cost of housing is eventually put a cap on development. Because we can't keep development at the rate that we are. Madam Speaker, I'm from the district of West Bay. West Bay is overdeveloped. From West Bay, 7 Mile Beach, to town, now going to Prospect, Red Bay. To be honest, I kind of wish that the West Bayers had an attitude of East Enders when it came to defending our land. Because if you look at East End, the district of East End and North Side, there's not much development there. Whenever I go there, I feel like I'm back home in Cayman. But in the western side of the island, I feel like I'm not in Cayman no more. Now, with this, Madam Speaker, I would like to take a moment to pose possible solutions to kind of assist the opposition in what can be done and the government to help retract the costs of housing. One solution that I was advised on was regulation on costs in terms of rent, such as implement a renters board to assist upon the cap on what landowners are able to charge consumers. That should be implemented. Also, a rezone of various areas for land. However, this we have to be cautious with, because one mistake can put everything out of balance. Another third solution is a national clearinghouse program such as WORK, in which is one website where all property and sales of land is on for persons
who are interested in purchasing property can go to. Another solution is education in our school systems to assist our people to provide with the knowledge they need in terms of what to do when searching for property to buy, going to the bank to apply for a loan, and what it takes to qualify for a loan. Another solution, which may seem controversial, or two, is one, to implement a law that any property purchased by a foreign national is then sold back to a Caymanian. That way, this issue with Caymanians not having access to land or being outbid by land puts us in a position where we can get our land back. Now, I believe our Minister of Finance may refer to the immigration point system. Again, another controversial option. Remove the requirement of Factor 3 on the immigration point system for foreign nationals to have to purchase land to go towards their point system. We spoke of supply and demand. The demand is there for the land, but we do not have supply. So we remove the demand. Do not make it a requirement for foreign nationals to purchase property. This won't necessarily stop them from attaining permanent residency, but will give Caymanians a chance to actually purchase property and to sell on the market.
Elected member, your time is up.
Madam Speaker, can I have additional time, please?
You may have an additional 30 seconds.
So, Madam Speaker, is with this, there's persons who are expecting me fired up, but to be honest, I'm tired. And with my experience of this government, in terms of this motion, there have been views of racial discrimination. So it's with this, Madam Speaker, that I no longer identify myself as a member of government. It's with this I made a decision to become an independent member of this parliament and move across on the next side. With this, Madam Speaker, in respected Premier, I want to vote no to this motion. However, my mind is open to consideration to vote yes. At this moment, I will abstain my vote. But as is, Madam Speaker, I rather stand with those who are for our people than with those who use democracy as a cloak to justify their reasons of racial and forms of discrimination. Because as a generational Caymanian on this government, Madam Speaker, I was referred to being ignorant, racist, and delusional for stating the spot that when it came to this matter, the rights of Caymanians are prioritized over non-Caymanians, and it's the rights of Caymanians need to be put forward going forward. And just to put this out there, one of the true costs of why property is rising is the fact that there is no regulation on the real estate sector of our economy.
Elected member, your time is up.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Firstly, I would like to respond to the elected member of Savannah, as in her evidence it states 70% of sale values come from Canada, the US, and the UK, further proving our point. And I can also see that our past member of government is annoyed due to the fact that she has been demoted from minister to backbencher, and now she's a member of the opposition.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
I recognize the elected member of West Bay North.
There's a point of order in regards to not to speak to anything personal. And Madam Speaker, this was not personal. It's professional. So it's not me with the afflicted feelings, it's the members of government. Because I've had the government's back. And I've done what I could to provide with the information they need to make the arguments that they need to today. And it's with this, Madam Speaker, instead of utilizing the opportunity to actually work with the opposition, they chose to discriminate against Caymanians and vote no to this motion. So if I was government, watch it.
Honorable Minister of Education, please refrain from speaking about the elected member of West Bay North in the remainder of your speech. You may continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Firstly, I'd like to point out how non-coherent this motion is, as there's simply no structure to it. A Caymanian. Madam Speaker, what and how does the opposition class someone as a Caymanian? As you will note, throughout the opposition's proposed motion, you will read the word Caymanian several times. But
Madam Speaker, point of order.
I recognize the elected member of West Bay North.
Madam Speaker, the question the Honourable Minister of Education is posing is inappropriate. For there is a definition of Caymanian, as it is by law and academic. So with that, Madam Speaker, it's not a question they should be asking this House or the opposition, but themselves.
Honourable Minister of Education, please rephrase your statement.
Can I actually have evidence of that? Sorry, because I would like the member to present evidence if they are so very emotional about this.
Honourable Minister of Education, it is written in law what the definition of a Caymanian is, and with that, I will not ask her to provide evidence, but I will ask you to continue your speech.
Madam Speaker, I do have evidence if they will like it still.
That is unnecessary. Please continue your speech.
Madam Speaker, as we know, we are the government, and the opposition can say that we are supposed to know all the answers. But for the government to make the best decision possible on this motion, it has to contain useful information, such as the number of affordable houses required. How many houses do we need to build? Do we need 20, 200, 2,000, 2 million? Because at this point, I don't know. I really don't. Also, what is the price range of an affordable house? What does the opposition class as being affordable housing? Furthermore, the motion makes no reference...
I recognize the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, point of elucidation.
Honourable Minister of Education, do you give way?
I decline.
Please continue your speech.
This motion makes no reference to the census of 2021. Surely, Madam Speaker, the data received in 2021 provides much more accurate and reliable information than any data compiled from 2010. Are the Frank Hall homes considered affordable housing? After all, they have little to no stamp duty for first-time Caymanian buyers, and essentially it allows them to climb up the property ladder. What is affordable housing in consideration to the current market? Madam Speaker, the preamble to this proposed motion is not only outdated, but confusing. An example of this being the first statement referring to the 2010 housing census, as it mentions affordable housing for Caymanians. Therefore, I would argue that this statement is completely irrelevant, as it's using old data for its argument. Has the opposition considered the cumulative price increase over the past 12 years? In addition, inflation continues to rise globally, more recently due to COVID, and now the Russian-Ukrainian war, providing the opposition's data to be inaccurate and therefore insufficient. Throughout this motion, there is also the constant use of the term foreign national.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Regarding the correct increase in inflation...
Madam Speaker, is that a point of order
Point
or
of order, Madam Speaker. Regarding the correct statement of the increase in inflation over the past couple of months and obviously last couple of years due to COVID, it is still the case that the increase in inflation does not trump the increase in the average cost of housing in the Cayman Islands. Madam Speaker.
Can I have proof of that, please?
Honourable Minister of Education, please continue your speech.
Who is a foreign national? Is Dart considered a foreign national even though he's obtained status? This motion makes it harder for people to buy property considering the license program that the opposition wants to implement. Therefore, contradicting the established capitalist economy we have going. Essentially, I see this as trying to reinvent the wheel by limiting expats from purchasing property. It goes against the economic model of our country, as we cannot grow the private sector without investment from non-Caymanians.
I recognize the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
The honourable member asked a question to the opposition. Point of order, by the way. Am I allowed to respond?
No, you are not. Please continue your speech.
If anything, this comes across as a communist motion, which is simply the opposite of the principal beliefs of Cayman. If this motion were to be passed, which the government will not allow, what I see happening is two different arguments.
I recognize the elected member of Easton.
Point of elucidation, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Minister, do you give way?
I decline. Is it an immigration or a planning issue? Madam Speaker, the first resolution of the opposition's motion detracts from their Caymanian argument as it considers restrictions on a number of high-cost housing, which the opposition has made clear Caymanians cannot afford. I understand this issue is prevalent in today's community. However, I feel it's been gone about completely wrong. It should be about providing affordable housing for Caymanians, not putting bans on buying housing for foreign nationals. This motion has no consideration of the current infrastructure or business licenses. What is the criteria of all of this? Overall, I would say this is a temporary solution and does not consider the growing market. Simply, this motion is a mess and quite frankly a joke, as the opposition cannot even class if it is a planning or an immigration issue. Therefore, Madam Speaker, I believe we cannot allow this bill or this motion to pass. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honourable Minister of Home Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this motion has a base idea I think we can all agree on. Caymanians deserve and are entitled to affordable housing and shelter in their own country. However, the way this motion is written and presented in the chamber today is ludicrous and laughable. This is such a relevant issue, and for the opposition to present a barely 2-page long motion with text graced by large fonts and skipped lines shows to the people watching and our country how much the opposition pretends to care about this issue. I can assure you, Madam Speaker, that this motion will very much cause the opposite of what the miseducated opposition is aiming to do for our country.
I recognize the elected member of Newlands.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. This honourable member is imputing improper motives to this opposition. I would like him to retract his statement.
Honourable Minister of Home Affairs, please retract your statement and refrain from using unparliamentary language for the remainder of your speech.
Madam Speaker, I would like to draw your attention to a certain line in this motion.
Honourable Minister of Home Affairs, please retract your statement.
I retract my statement.
Thank you.
May I
You may continue.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I would like to draw your attention to a certain line in this motion. Specifically, considers implementing a license program. What is this license program? What will be its criteria? We do not write bills or motions with uncertainty and anarchy. We write them with patriotism and clarity for all Caymanians and judges. This motion does not deserve to even be considered by the government, as it is a simplistic solution for which will not work for a complex issue. Madam Speaker, maybe the opposition doesn't know about fundamental economics, considering the first resolution will crush the balance of the supply-demand chain, making an inarticulate excuse for a motion.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Point of order. Can my honourable member please present evidence as to how it will crush the economic system? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Minister, can you provide the evidence?
I never said it would crush the economic system. I said it would crush the first resolution of basic economics, of the supply and demand chain. And that is a point of elucidation, not a point of order.
That was a point of order.
Sorry.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask my honourable member to please withdraw his statement, retract his statement.
Honourable Minister of Home Affairs, I ask you to retract your statement, and you may continue your speech.
I retract my statement. Additionally, there's not a single statistic stated within this motion. How much expensive housing will be allowed to be constructed before the motion takes effect? What is the cost of an affordable home? Will this cost be updated based on inflation or remain static, like a boulder dragging down this island? The opposition seems to have no answer to these fundamental questions, proving the complete lack of thought and planning the opposition has put into this motion. If the opposition truly cares for Caymanians, instead of creating divide and anger, they would be creating unity and peace. Furthermore, how will this imaginary licensing program be set up? On the back of the immigration system, already under immense pressure from the COVID-19 pandemic to deal with? I apologize to the Madam Speaker for this embarrassment on behalf of the opposition, as because of them, I cannot begin to formulate an answer for you.
I recognize the elected member of Newlands.
Madam Speaker, this point of order, Madam Speaker. This honourable member is again imputing improper motives against the opposition. I would further like him to retract his statement.
Honourable Minister, please refrain from imputing improper motives against the opposition. Please retract your statement and you may continue your speech.
Madam Speaker, there are only three points of order per speech. I retract my statement. I'll continue. Thirdly, what conditions does dreamt-up license program have for these licenses? Thirdly, what condition does this dreamt-up license program intend to have for receiving one of these licenses? What about people who have a criminal record but have since redeemed themselves? Would they be allowed to receive a license or not? I begin to question, does this opposition believe they are no longer entitled to the human right of housing? I would like to elaborate on this, Madam Speaker. How dare the opposition have the audacity to assert they know better than the consumer and the incredible intellectual mind that put together human rights? I speak for all members of the
elected member of Newlands, please be seated. Honourable Minister of Home Affairs, please refrain from imputing improper motives against the opposition. You may continue your speech.
I speak for all members in this government when I say we stand against discrimination, we stand against planned economies, and we stand against the denial of human rights to any people, be them Caymanians or expats. Furthermore, we stand against communism, Madam Speaker. This motion is of communistic principles, and this government will under no circumstances allow such appalling communistic agenda in the House. This motion intends to shove the government between the consumer and the business person. Is this what the people want? A meddlesome middleman to oversee and judge all transactions? I can assure you, Madam Speaker, this is not how this nation furthers its goals, one of which is to be seriously recognized on an international stage. How can this nation even hope to be recognized if we are accepting the philosophy of Marxism, proven after the Soviet Union and North Korea to be a total and utter failure? I'm hoping this opposition does not hope to see the country starving like Cuba or North Korea. In conclusion, this motion will not achieve its noble intentions, but completely of its own fault will be an extra drag and weight on this society and to its people, and must not pass in anything slightly resembling its current form. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak?
Madam Speaker, point of order.
Elected member for West Bay North, please be seated. I recognize the elected member for Prospect.
I would like to thank Madam Speaker for giving me the opportunity to speak in this Parliament. Now, as my peers have stated previously, our motion is about providing restrictions on the amount of high-cost homes being built and implementing the requirement of licenses for foreign nationals looking to purchase residence on island. In the creating process of our motion, We wanted to make the living situation in Cayman more suitable for Caymanians. In doing so, I will further delve into how the migration of Caymanians has factored into the current housing problem. To start, the purchasing of a home in Cayman is not an easy undertaking. Whether the house is out of the price range or the price for building materials are too expensive. These factors make it nearly impossible for Caymanians to acquire a home.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Education.
Madam Speaker, point of order. Can the elected member please provide documentation that it is impossible or near to impossible to find affordable housing in Cayman?
Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, point of order. Repetition. They've asked evidence for this, and our other members have already stated why this is the case, and they've gotten the evidence. I'm afraid I don't know if we still have it because they've taken a lot of it already.
Elected Honorable Minister of Education, please be seated. Elected Member for Prospect, please continue your speech.
The average cost of a house in the Cayman Islands is currently at $847,000, as my members have previously stated. These prices are way out of the price range for an average Caymanian, whose average salary is estimated to be around 66,977 KYD per year, as my member has previously stated. The prices of homes now...
Honorable Minister of Education. What is your point of order?
Point of order. Repetition. This entire speech so far has been repetition. So can you please retract your statements?
Madam Speaker, point of order. There's been too much flabbergasting. Can you allow the member to continue her speech?
Thank you. Honorable Elected Member for Prospect, please continue your speech.
The prices of a home now are only applicable to expats who can afford the current pricing of a home. Madam Speaker, what happens to the Caymanians that cannot afford? These prices make it almost impossible to settle down with a home, so they start exploring internationally. Since many Caymanians cannot afford the houses in the current real estate market, they start looking overseas for better options, and often they never come back. This leads to a decrease of Caymanians on the island, which contributes to brain drain. Brain drain, as my member rightfully said, is the departure of educated or professional people from one country, economic sector, or field for another, usually for better pay or living conditions. So when talented individuals leave the island because the cost of living here is too expensive, this...
Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, please be seated.
This contributes to the leaving of Caymanians from the island and brain drain as well. Madam Speaker, government keeps neglecting this issue and has gotten to the point of Caymanians migrating. Is this the government that we want leading us? This government has attended to only their foreign investors and forgotten about their own people who have opted now to leave for a better life. Traditionally, Cayman was a place that people flocked to in search of better opportunities, living accommodations, and to settle down to start a family. Cayman attracted an estimate of 130 nationalities living here who have made Cayman their home. But what happened to the Caymanians? As the wave of immigrants settle in Cayman, Caymanians start to feel marginalized in their homeland and look elsewhere for prosperity. A major factor which led to Caymanians feeling marginalized and the shrinkage of the middle class is the new wealth-based residency. To apply for this new wealth residency, applicants must invest at least $1.2 million in the islands, which half of that sum must go to real estate. Meeting this and other criteria qualifies applicants for a 25-year residency certificate with the ability to renew. Due to this, there's less affordable housing for Caymanians and more high-end homes being built because there's a high demand for them based on their wealthy residents. Which is why implementing a license for non-Caymanians can help to balance the real estate market and regulate the amount of high-cost homes being built. Implementing these restrictions can help to keep Caymanians in Cayman. also to help keep the Cayman history and heritage alive. Cayman history is a major aspect of what Cayman is. And when Caymanians start leaving for better living space, the more the Caymanian history goes with them. To conclude, Madam Speaker, I implore you to pass our motion. For not only will the real estate market be in balance, but also Caymanians will be able to stay in Cayman. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to express my opinion on the motion before this Honorable Youth Parliament, as I cannot support the motion for the following reasons. Madam Speaker, the opposition's motion will only have significant effects on the economic and financial development of this island that we represent with pride. Madam Speaker, what this bill is proposing is that this country and its land belong only to Caymanians. We will need to change our slogan to Cayman Unkind. Who are we to tell anyone who wishes and has the financial means to buy or build their own home or commercial property and now say, you can come here, please donate to the 108 charities, work, shop, eat out at one of our 200 restaurants, 200 amazing restaurants, might I add. But if you want to stay, you will be paying rent.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, please be seated. Honorable Deputy Premier, please continue your speech.
Madam Speaker, the economic and financial impact this motion will have on our island will be detrimental to our country's reputation and financial stability. The financial report of September 2021 reported stamp duty from land transfers were 51.1 million higher than expected volume of property transactions. 51.1 million higher. Cost of civil servants' wages totaled 278.8 million. That is 13.1 million higher than 2020. If we were to pass this motion, how will we make up for that loss in revenue? How do you suppose we pay those wages for our civil servants? We will need to increase the fees and duties charged on items and services, ultimately increasing the cost of living in Cayman, the very thing that we don't want to do. So rather than doing better for Caymanians, you're ultimately doing worse for them. This motion is asking people to pay for a license in order to obtain property. Currently, real estate brokers and lawyers pay fees to the government to provide this service, to purchase land. They will no longer need are you saying that they will no longer need a lawyer or broker? They can complete this transaction in the Department of Land Registry, therefore requiring the government to hire such people to complete this process. Cost of wages for ultimately increasing the cost of wages. That makes absolutely no sense. You want to limit the building of higher valued property, but now you need more of just that to pay for the wages of civil servants? This motion will affect us by pushing away investments from our country and going beyond our borders. The financial institutions who bring in investments will no longer be sustainable. The sustainability of Cayman will cease, leading tourism to diminish. Without financial, development, and tourism industries, Cayman would be in a catastrophic situation. Every action has a reaction, and the fairy reaction will be one that the public will not enjoy, as we would have lost our very pillars that hold this country together. Caymanians are afforded the exemption of stamp duty on their first purchase of house or property. This is a fair and lawful process for our constituents to purchase highly valued home. Madam Speaker, As the Minister of Financial and Economic Development, as well as the Deputy Premier, this motion is disheartening. It is not building the Caymankind brand in this small society. We as elected members should protect our fragile institution. Who are we to say who can or who cannot own property in these Cayman Islands? In my final words, Madam Speaker, there is more good than what meets the eye. So rather than creating a divide or us versus them, let us work together and build Cayman up. As well as, I would like to say in my final words, the oppositions are like the Russians of this country.
Madam Speaker.
Honorable Deputy Premier, you are imputing improper motives against the opposition, and I will ask you to retract that statement.
I would like to retract
Thank you, Madam
that statement.
Speaker.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the elected member of Newlands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, as my colleagues have previously stated, we as the opposition would like to bring forth a motion that will encourage more affordable housing for Caymanians in the Cayman Islands. Now, housing and its prices has become an extreme issue, and we as the opposition have heard the cries of our citizens and have decided to act in this motion to restrict high-cost housing and implement a land and housing purchase license for non-Caymanians. Now, Madam Speaker, it seems as if this government is afraid of losing their money, as all I've been hearing is money this, money that. Are you saying that losing a couple dollars is more important or better than having 10 Caymanians buy homes and stay on these islands?
Honorable Minister of Education, please be seated.
Madam Speaker, what is Cayman without its people? Now, in these times where the housing and real estate market seems to be stretching to an all-time high, the Caymanians and locals are at all-time lows. We are now starting to become a factory for foreigners and those who buy into the Cayman Islands and have settled. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not believe that there is anything wrong with the introduction of new people into our economy and our islands, but when do we draw the line? Is it when the ratio of Caymanians is at 90 to 10? Or is it now when we have identified this issue and we have this opportunity? Madam Speaker, this motion will provide more affordable housing for those who are citizens of the Cayman Islands. It will help to decrease competition between foreign buyers and those who would like to purchase locally. This would help to remedy the current issue that is facing our Cayman Islands, which is the current rise in foreign ownership of land. It is now seen that in the islands, it has become more difficult for Caymanians to buy affordable homes. I can bet you that this government that I stand before today has never thought of why this issue may be or how they could remedy it. But I guess, as I said, because they're getting their dollars, they won't see a thing. Now, Madam Speaker.
Elected member for Newlands, you are imputing improper motives against the government. I will ask you to retract that statement.
I'll retract my statement, Madam Speaker. Forgive me.
Thank you. You may continue your speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, Madam Speaker, it is this consistent disregard that has placed the Cayman Islands in the situation that we're in now, as this government has failed to implement restrictions on the buying of land by foreign nationals, which is decreasing the land available for purchase by Caymanians. Oftentimes, these same foreigners don't even end up living on the land, but renting it out for more money to our same Caymanians. Now, Madam Speaker, we as the opposition have identified this issue and would like to bring your attention to the fact that Caymanians are struggling to get by. You rarely find that a middle-class Caymanian has purchased a home in these times. And it's not because they do not want to, but it's simply because they cannot afford it. Now, Madam Speaker, with the rejection of this motion, this government will be saying that they would like to see the Caymanian population decrease from being 53% to 40%, to 30%, to 20%, till we're a country overrun by foreigners. Madam Speaker, as a young person myself, at the rate the Cayman Islands is going now, I'll have no opportunity of buying my own home, no hope, no chance, because by the time I become an adult, I'll already be priced out of my own country. There no longer be anything here that will remind me of home. Home being my sweet, sweet Caymanian rock, my sweet, sweet Caymanian culture. And Madam Speaker, it starts with us, the future of the Cayman Islands, the bright hearts and minds that will light the torch of tomorrow. Now, Madam Speaker, if this government rejects this motion, they'll be locking away any hope of the culture-rich Caymanian that we know and love today. There'll be no one to help carry out traditions, and we'll be locking away any hope, and we'll become a factory for foreigners. Because houses will no longer be affordable for that middle-class family. This family who has a mother that must work 2 jobs to pay off her mortgage, a father who is sleeping in his car because he cannot afford that 1-bedroom house that is for $300,000. Now, Madam Speaker, this government would seem inhumane to throw away that mother's, that father's, that family's chance of comfortable living. Madam Speaker, I have to ask if this is really the government that we would like to represent us. Is this really the government that's supposed to be for the people, by the people? Now, Madam Speaker, in my closing, I say that this motion will benefit many, and it may even benefit you, me, and our future generations. So I urge and implore this government to accept and endorse this motion for that father, for that mother, for that family, for us, the future, so that we and they may have a better life. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to oppose the motion brought upon the House by the opposition. Madam Speaker, let me start by commenting on the first whereas. The Cayman Islands Population and Housing Census 2010 states that there is a high demand for affordable housing for Caymanians. Madam Speaker, the government cannot make decisions using information from 12 years ago. The opposition either could have waited for the 2020 census results to be published or could have contacted the Statistics Office. Madam Speaker, in 2021 alone, our island saw $1.43 billion in real estate transactions. $1.43 billion. This equated to $121,902,677 being collected in stamp duty. Madam Speaker, that $121 million in stamp duty, which was used to fund the police, fund law and order, our hospitals, ambulances, pave our roads, and fund the government scholarship program to educate our children and to fund the buses that drive our children. Madam Speaker, that's $121 million to empower the Caymanian people. Without that $121 million, Madam Speaker, the government would not have been able to pay the tourism workers' stipend throughout the pandemic. And for the opposition to ask the government to restrict foreign buyers, which essentially means strangling the government of funding which empowers Caymanians. Madam Speaker, I completely get it. This is a very important issue that needs to be discussed. And I think it is common knowledge for me to say that, yes, prices of homes are increasing. But is this the way to solve the issue? Absolutely not. Madam Speaker, the opposition has brought this motion upon the House today out of intent. But, Madam Speaker, the government is not about intent, but about making the best possible decision for the people of our country. And, Madam Speaker, the opposition has not thought through this motion and what this would mean for our country in terms of change. And, Madam Speaker, that is exactly the reason they're the opposition, because they don't think. But we're the government because we think. We think wider, we think further, and we think for the future
Honourable
of our
Premier,
country.
you are imputing improper motives against the opposition, so please retract that statement saying that the opposition does not think.
I retract that statement, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if the opposition had done their research, they would know that affordable housing programs do exist. For example, this is not a program, but this is an incentive. As one of my ministers stated, first-time Caymanian home buyers pay no stamp duty up to $400,000 and only 2% up to $500,000. And I want to emphasize this, Madam Speaker. When government revenue falls because we're not bringing money into our country, the government wouldn't have money to power street lights, fund the police, fund law and order. And if the government doesn't have money to fund law and order, our beloved country becomes a dangerous place to live in. Madam Speaker, the opposition might think that I am talking about extremes. But no, Madam Speaker, all the changes suggested in the motion are too drastic. But there must be change, Madam Speaker. But change which is soft, slow, and patient. Madam Speaker, it is our free trade economy which has made our country into one of the most prosperous countries in the whole wide world. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honourable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to oppose private member motion number 1 of 2022. Madam Speaker, I haven't fight sleep so hard in my life before. The repetition of the opposition just proves the lack of points they have to support their own motion. Restriction on high-cost housing and implementation of a land and housing purchase license for non-Caymanians is not a solution. Yes, there is a concern for the cost of housing in Cayman, but targeting non-Caymanians and saying that they would need to purchase a license in order to own land or housing in Cayman Islands is against their basic human rights. Section 15 of the Constitution of the Cayman Islands mentions there should be no cause of any hardship that may result to any person having an interest in right over property.
Elected member for Georgetown South, please be seated. You may continue your speech.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What does the opposition think enforcing a license for the purchase of land and property on non-Caymanians would do? It would create tremendous amount of problems within our island. Cayman is known for welcoming others and showing them what our island has to offer. And now the opposition wants to create a divide? There should not be a division amongst Caymanians and non-Caymanians. We should not discriminate. Cayman has never shut its door on others, so why would we do that now? Madam Speaker, the impact of the opposition motion would be catastrophic to the economy. Restrictions will make Cayman less attractive and will discourage those who want to buy and invest in property. This motion could push away foreign investors. Why would we want to interfere with foreign investors? They fund our roads, pay our police officers, our ambulances, traffic lights, and even scholarships. We would be left with having to find another source of income for the island. What we need to do is not restrict foreigners, but instead assist Caymanians. Let me repeat that. What we need to do is not restrict foreigners, but instead assist Caymanians. Madam Speaker, there are many factors that contribute to the price of housing and land, such as the location or district, the materials used, or the year it was built, the size and condition, and so much more. Madam Speaker, high-cost housing generates local economic activity, including jobs and income generated by construction workers and new residents. The restriction on the number of high-cost housing that can be developed on an annual basis would not solve anything. Let me tell you what it would do. It would reduce the opportunity for those who have an interest in purchasing high-cost housing. It would take away many jobs, as a lot of workers look forward to development of high-cost housing each year in order for income. and it would reduce the amount of high-cost housing purchased each year, henceforth reducing the investments made from these properties. Madam Speaker, the income from stamp duties on land transfer was $104.3 million. The opposition stated the government would lose a couple of dollars. Is the opposition aware that a couple means two? The real estate market is booming in the Cayman Islands, and the opposition wants to interfere with that? Who is to say that there are not many Caymanians purchasing high-cost housing? Why is it assumed that it's only foreigners? There is no official record to say what percentage of housing in Cayman Islands is purchased by Caymanians and what percentage is purchased by non-Caymanians, as opposition would state. So, is it that the opposition is just looking at the houses that seem high cost and saying to themselves, yup, a Caymanian does not own that? I wouldn't take that lightly. Furthermore,
Honorable Minister, you are imputing improper motives. Please retract your statement.
I retract my statement.
Thank you.
Furthermore, where is the claim that there's a shortage of affordable housing in Cayman? Affordable housing for Caymanians coming from? Is this to say that the opposition believes that Caymanians cannot afford certain homes? Is the opposition calling Caymanians broke?
Honorable Minister, please retract that statement.
I retract my statement.
Thank you.
It's the facts, though. Madam Speaker, I wonder if the opposition is truly aware of the disturbance that this motion would cause within our island. I can already see Cayman Road posting up. Non-Caymanians are being restricted on purchasing land and housing. That would get the wrong attention. How does the opposition think non-Caymanians would feel after seeing that? They are welcomed here, influenced to spend money on our island and invest in our island, but then are being discriminated against purchasing land and property. How does that work? Cayman Islands is not the only country facing the problem of affordable housing.
Honorable Minister, your time is up.
May I please have an additional minute?
You may conclude your speech.
Okay. Thank you. What the opposition is proposing in their motion has been done before and has failed in other countries. For instance, in 2018, New Zealand introduced a ban on foreign buyers purchasing existing homes in New Zealand. 3 years later, this ban has not resulted in lower cost prices. In fact, New Zealand is seeing record high prices in the year-over-year increase of 22%. What does the opposition think would happen if this was to take place in Cayman? As the government, we have to be careful and think these things through. Unfortunately, opposition did not think this through. Therefore, this government cannot support this motion and will not.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It appears that there's been, It appears that there's been a lot of disconnect between the opposition and the government today, and there's been a lot of arguments and even one member leaving the government, so I would like to clear the air. Now, I'm sorry to say this, but my opposition has been attacked for their motives so many times, and I would like to say that if the government wants to argue on repetition of points and then to go against our motives, that maybe they should consider that half of their speeches was simply attacking our motions, and I did not appreciate that comment. Moving on. To get into the motion itself, restriction on the development of high-cost housing. To speak on this, we do not consider some arbitrary number that was proposed by the government that would determine how many high-cost houses may be built annually, but rather restricting the profitability of building higher-cost homes as opposed to lower-cost homes. Therefore, making it so that developers would be incentivized to build lower-cost homes as opposed to these higher-cost homes, therefore restricting their development. In regard to the license program, it will not be a measure to prevent people from buying homes, but rather as a way to identify and regulate which developers are eligible for incentives and rebates underneath the license program, as well as to prevent flipping of property and selling for commercial purposes this property for selfish benefit. To acquire a developer license, one must simply present their business license to the government as well as citizen status. To acquire a purchase license, one must simply provide citizenship status and identification. That is all. For developers, once a house is finished construction and listed for sale, the developer will send the sale price to the government. If the house is underneath the affordability line, which, although we have proposed 400,000 Cayman Islands dollar, we recognize that inflation is true and this number is not concrete and so is subject to change. The developer will receive a percentage rebate on stamp and import duty for construction materials. This is to incentivize the building of more affordable homes and make the development of affordable homes more profitable to developers. The zoning laws will also alter the amount of stamp duty depending on where the property is taking place. As the government has rightfully stated, this will affect the cost of the property. I agree with this statement. For example, altering stamp duties depending on the district. This would include lowering stamp duty depending on where it's built, such as eastern districts or other areas that the government will deem fit, so as to encourage investment as well as reduce traffic problems that are so widespread, as I'm sure most of you encountered coming to Parliament today. This is all to incentivize the building of more affordable homes. In addition, the government has said a lot about supply and demand, and they have stated basic principles of economics, which are true, that there is supply and there's demand. However, we do not intend to reduce the supply, but simply make sure that the supply, who are we supplying? Are we supplying for our people, our Caymanians, or the foreigners coming in and buying the land? Because we, as the government, are for Caymanians. No matter what race you are, Caymanian is Caymanian. So that is that. In addition, the government has also stated, and you can correct me on this because I am quoting one of the honorable ministers, that we do not, quote, bite the hand that feeds us. This is not what the motion presented is here for today. We simply do not want the hand that has been giving us money to take advantage of this and use this as an excuse to take over this country, as all of this purchasing of land will lead to increased political influence. Is it segregation when we are trying to look out for our people? The current issue is that anyone from anywhere can purchase lands in our islands unrestricted. We are here for our locals and our own people. How does the honorable member intend to introduce a dual market without segregation? Let us keep in mind the spirit and the title of our motion. We are not removing foreigners from the equation. We are trying to ease the height of competition for our Caymanians. Again, as they have rightly said, with supply and demand, increased demand results in increased price with the lower supply. We want to make sure that the demand is not as high for our Caymanian citizens. We are, in fact, a gem of the Caribbean, and the opposition would like to keep it that way and make sure that we remain so, but as Caymanian citizens of our own government, because we are Cayman, not any other country, and we would like to stay that way. I recognize that my time is up, and I would like to finish. Thank you for your time.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If no other member wishes to speak, I will ask the elected member for Georgetown South to exercise his right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After our well-spirited debate, I'm sure we're all ready to go home. Well, that's if we have a home to go back to. The government is so against this bill that I am scared for the future of the Cayman Islands. Madam Speaker, I'd like to start off by saying this. The theme of this Commonwealth is delivering a common future. But what I gathered from this government is that they failed to deliver a hopeful future for our youth. Their future for young people is as clear as mud. Once bitten, twice shy. If the government is begging for this bill to be failed, how will future generations take it? Madam Speaker, I'd like to start off with a rebuttal from the Honourable Minister of Planning. She made mention to the Constitution Article 15, which states that the government shall not interfere with the personal enjoyment of any person's property. Peaceful enjoyment of any person's property. Madam Speaker, we're putting this license program before they get the property. They don't have property to be peaceful on until they get this license program. And to go further, the Cayman Islands Constitution, Section 16, which talks about discrimination. Number 3, no law or decision of any public official shall contravene with this section if it has an objective or unreasonable justification and its reasonable preparation is to its claim in the interest of defense of public safety, public order, public morality, or public health. Madam Speaker, this is a public crisis. Starting with the Minister of Tourism. The minister said that the opposition will have the opposite effect for what we're aiming for. But that's quite frankly not it. We're trying to have the opposite effect of this problem. To correct her, we aren't charging for this license. We're simply saying once you meet the criteria that will be created if this motion is passed, we will then issue the license if they meet it. She goes on to say that the tourism industry may be on its way to a full-time recovery, but the amount of Caymanians owning high cost in land is on its way to the ER. The fee she is referring to in the planning and development may have gone to waste. If Caymanians are still suffering, it seems that the government is implying that the money is being wasted on the Planning and Development Act, almost like a Friday night woman. The Minister of Financial Services talked big things about Shacktown 7 Mile Beach. The minister must have been hungry for shark burgers. But Madam Speaker, I am hungry too. Hungry for the islands to be better, hungry for justice, hungry for this motion to be passed. He goes on to say that no one wants to build a low-cost housing on a high-cost land, yet provided no evidence of this. I'd rather have a shack on the beach knowing that it's Caymanian owned than to have some foreigners tell me I can't walk on the beach because it's private property. Madam Speaker, why can't we as the Cayman Islands feed ourselves? Maybe the Minister of Financial Services should be answering the Minister of Tourism of where our money is going to. The elected member of Bordentown. We as the opposition would like to applaud the elected member of Bordentown for standing up for Caymanians' right, putting aside pride and crossing the floor for justice. The Honourable Minister of Education. We did not say that the government knows all the answers. We are simply asking the government to help the opposition and help in making this motion a reality and helping Caymanians. With the census being in 2010, at the time of writing this motion, those results weren't available to us. The Minister of Education should have known that ignorance is bliss. She should have remained humble in her position and instead of using this as a media for anger management rehabilitation.
Elected member for Georgetown South, please retract that statement and refrain from using improper motives against the government.
I will retract my statement. The Honourable Minister of Home Affairs reminded me of one thing and one thing only, and I will retract this statement at the end. The higher the monkey climb, the more their booty show. To the Honourable Deputy Premier, we in no way, shape, or form want this land to be just for Caymanians, but we need to come back with some type of balance. She made the mistake to say that they have to pay for the license once again. We made no mention that they have to pay for the license. Madam Speaker, she said that this motion will make Cayman unkind, but this motion is because Cayman was too kind. Madam Speaker, the Honourable Premier said 1.3 billion in real estate, but how much was from Caymanians? How many Caymanians could even know that price in their bank account? To say that the opposition doesn't know anything, he said to say that the opposition doesn't think is quite frankly disgusting. How can the Honourable Premier think that we created this motion? How does he think we created this motion? We didn't just look to this guy and say, housing. Madam Speaker, this shows one thing. If we want to achieve something, we have to be united, because today we were divided. And for that, Madam Speaker, I apologize. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question is, be it therefore resolved that this Honourable Youth Parliament considers implementing restrictions on the number of high-cost housing that can be developed on an annual basis. Be it therefore further resolved that this Honourable Youth Parliament...
Madam Speaker, I'd like for the be therefore resolved that be voted separately.
Okay. The question is, be it therefore resolved that this Honorable Youth Parliament considers implementing restrictions on the number of high-cost housing that can be developed on an annual basis. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, no? The noes have it.
Madam Speaker, can I have a division, please?
Madam Clerk, please take the division.
Honorable Shankar Paraj.
No.
Honorable Elizabeth Thomas.
No.
Honorable Kira Bodden.
No.
Honorable Chanel Martinez.
No.
Honorable Deshanti McLaughlin Richards.
No.
Honorable Michael Glidden.
No.
Honorable Charles Player.
No.
Honorable Sienna Jack.
No.
Mr. Juan Leon Carlos.
No.
Ms. Janae Whitaker.
Aye.
Mr. White McLaughlin.
No.
Honorable George Green.
Aye.
Mr. Chad Powell.
Aye.
Ms. Hannah Bodden.
Aye.
Honorable Rion Porter.
Aye.
Ms. Thalia Clark.
Aye.
Ms. Janelle Cahoon.
Aye.
Ms. Honora Moyton.
Aye.
Mr. Jacob Kelly Johnson.
Aye.
The result of the division is 9 ayes and 10 noes. The noes have it. Be it therefore further resolved that this Honorable Youth Parliament considers implementing a license program in order to qualify and register any individual with the exemption of Caymanians who wishes to own land or housing in the Cayman Islands. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The noes have it.
Madam Speaker, can I have a division, please?
Madam Clerk, please take the division.
Honorable Shankar Palraj.
No.
Honorable Elizabeth Thomas.
No.
Honorable Kira Bodden.
No.
Honorable Chanel Martinez.
No.
Honorable Deshanti McLaughlin Richards.
No.
Honorable Michael Glidden.
No.
Honorable Charles Player.
No.
Honorable Sienna Jack.
No.
Mr. Juan Leon Carlos.
No.
Ms. Janae Whitaker.
Abstain.
Mr. White McLaughlin.
No.
Honorable George Green.
Aye.
Mr. Chad Powell.
Aye.
Ms. Hannah Bodden.
Aye.
Honorable Rion Porter.
Aye.
Ms. Thalia Clark.
Aye.
Ms. Janelle Cahoon.
Aye.
Ms. Honora Moyton.
Aye.
Mr. Jacob Kelly Johnson.
Aye.
The result of the division is 8 ayes, 10 noes, and 1 abstain. The noes have it. Be it therefore further resolved that this Honorable Youth Parliament considers amending the relevant acts so that only Caymanians or those individuals who have obtained a license can purchase land or housing in the Cayman Islands. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against, no.
Madam Speaker, can I have a division, please?
Madam Clerk, please take the division.
Honorable Shankar Palraj.
No.
Honorable Elizabeth Thomas.
No.
Honorable Kira Bodden.
No.
Okay. Honorable Chanel Martinez.
No.
Honorable Deshanti McLaughlin Richards.
No.
Honorable Michael Glidden.
No.
Honorable Charles Player.
No.
Honorable Sienna Jack.
No.
Mr. Juan Leon Carlos.
Nope.
Ms. Janae Whitaker.
Abstain.
Mr. Wyatt McLaughlin.
No.
Honorable George Green.
Abstain.
Mr. Chad Powell.
Abstain.
Ms. Hannah Bodden.
Abstain.
Honorable Rion Porter.
Abstain.
Ms. Thalia Clark.
Abstain.
Ms. Janelle Cahoon.
Aye.
Mr. Norm Whitten.
Aye.
Mr. Jacob Kelly Johnson.
Abstain.
The result of the division is 2 ayes, 10 noes, and 7 abstains. The noes have it. Private members motion number 1 of 2022, restriction on high-cost housing and implementation of land and housing purchase license for non-Caymanians has failed. That concludes the proceedings of this Honourable 15th Youth Parliament. I will now call on the Honourable Premier to move a motion for the adjournment.
Speaker, I move the motion for the adjournment of the House, sign and die, but before I do so, I'd like to offer a vote of thanks from the government. We would like to thank Harney's law firm for sponsoring Youth Parliament and Radio Cayman for airing our 15th Youth Parliament debate, Ms. Bina Money and GIS for photography, videos and public relations, past parliamentarians Mr. Arden McLean and Mr. Ezed Miller for their lectures on parliamentary questions, motions and debating, Ms. Cheryl Noblet and the Legal Drafting Department for assisting us with our sexual harassment bill, and Ms. Spencer for the Cayman Islands Crisis Centre for her lecture, and Dr. Lawrence and the Toastmasters for giving us advice on persuasive speaking and speech presentation, and the Youth Parliament Organising Committee, the Honourable Kenneth Bryan, Mr. Joseph Hugh and Miss Barbara Connolly for taking the time out on Tuesdays and Saturdays with assisting us and guiding us with our debates. To our parents for supporting us and allowing us to take part in this Youth Parliament, and for taking us to and from the Youth Parliament meetings twice weekly. To our schools for their support and understanding, and for excusing us from school today so that we could take part in this Youth Parliament, voicing and debating very topical issues in our society today. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the opposition, I would also like to express a vote of thanks.
Granted.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to express a vote of thanks to the Department of Planning, particularly Mr. Tristan Hydes, Mr. Haroon Pandofi, Mr. Charles Brown, for speaking with us about planning regulation and guidance on our motion. As well as this, Mr. Andrew Woodcock, attorney and Truman Bodden Law School, and former lecturer, Miss Laura Pandes, lecturer at the Truman Bodden Law School, for coming on Saturdays to assist with our speeches and give us advice on how to debate, signpost, and bring our point across effectively. As well as this, I would like to thank Mr. Michael Joseph from Property Cayman for taking the time to speak to us about the Cayman Islands real estate market, and Mr. Uchi Obi from Land and Survey for giving us insight from the lands and survey perspective. As well as this, Mr. Julio Ramos from National Housing Development Trust for the NHDT view on Cayman's housing market. The staff of the Parliament, Miss Zena Merin-Chin, Miss Norja Walcott, Miss Patricia Priestley, Mr. Christopher Clark, and Miss Akeem Lopez for making this Youth Parliament possible, and for giving us the opportunity to grow, and for giving up their weekends to ensure that we got our speeches together. To our parents for supporting us and allowing us to take part in this exceptional Youth Parliament, and for taking us, as my fellow member of government stated, from taking us to and from the Youth Parliament meetings, sometimes twice weekly. As well as this, to our schools for their continued support and understanding, for excusing us from school today so we could take part in this honourable Youth Parliament. In addition to this, Madam Speaker, I wish to express a vote of thanks to our Heavenly Father God, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II of the Cayman Islands, to congratulate Her Majesty on the Platinum Jubilee this Commonwealth Day, the Governor, His Excellency Martin Roper, the Premier, Honourable Wayne Panton, the Honourable Kenneth Bryan for all his assistance with the writing of our motion, and of course, the Honourable Rion Porter. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the elected member for West Bay North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Considering we've went way over time, I'm going to be quick with my vote of thanks. Now, with this, Madam Speaker, I probably want to speak on my experience with Youth Parliament, considering I've been involved with the program for 8 years. 7 years ago, been my first official debate where I was leader of the opposition. And since this time, without even knowing it, this program has opened doors for me as a young Caymanian. Since then, I graduated from John Gray High School with high honors. I then graduated from the University College of Cayman Islands with 3.5 GPA and associate's degree, with being on the president's list. On top of that, I was international recipient of the CARICOM ELAP scholarship, in which I was able to attend Marlborough University in Calgary, Canada, where I was able to complete my associate's degree. And now I'm in my final semester of my undergraduate degree. It's a joint honors degree in anthropology and cultural studies. With that, the journey I've had, where I'm at today, would not be without the program Youth Parliament. It laid the foundation for me to identify who I am and to find my voice. And with that, I would like to encourage all students who are here today, if they're interested, to return. And not only that, any students who's interested. And with that, and considering over the last 15 years, this program has primarily been consistent of high school students. This program also has the range to host students from 15 years old to 25 years old. I'm 23. I'll be 24 on Thursday. So with this, I hope that we can see, as Youth Parliament continues to grow, that it also continues to evolve. And with that, in conclusion, Madam Speaker, I wish to give my vote of thanks. Originally, I was supposed to participate on Zoom. If it weren't for these following individuals, I would not have been here today. And these individuals are the Speaker of the House, the Honorable W. McKeever Bush, the Deputy Premier, the Honorable Chris Saunders, the Minister of Home Affairs, my MP, the Honorable Bernie Bush, and the Most Honorable Catherine E. Banks Wilkes, who is the Chairman of the Youth Parliament Committee. And all these individuals support and believe in this program and back it up. If it weren't for these persons, I would not have been here today. So I give them my thanks. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the elected member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this vote of thanks is because this year is my last year here. 5 years ago, I was 14 years old at the John Gray High School, and my English teacher pushed me. She said, "Rion, you have a voice, use it." Shy as ever, I didn't want to compete. Couldn't be seen in public, couldn't do all of that. But she pushed me. 5 years later, I've represented the Cayman International stage, the regional stage. I've been the leader of the opposition for 3 years straight, the deputy speaker for 2 years. I've represented the Cayman Islands in Trinidad, St. Lucia, and Australia, represented the Cayman in the Regional Youth Parliament and the Commonwealth Youth Parliament, been on some political journeys this last elections with Wayne Panson and Heather Bawden, and obviously my mentor, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan. I want to thank everyone who was always there for me, especially Ms. Zina Marenchin, who put up with me all these years, despite my troubles. I want to thank also my mother for also encouraging me always to coming out. I want to thank everyone who has made an effort to come out, every parliamentarian who has shown their face today, because we are the future of the Cayman Islands. In fact, we are now the future of the Cayman. It is our generation, and we should be the ones to make a difference. Madam Speaker, I exercise my vote of thanks by saying thank you to God, thank you to my family, and thank you to everyone who has made a difference in my life. Thank you.
The motion is that this Honorable 15th Youth Parliament does stand adjourned, signed aye. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. This Honorable 15th Youth Parliament now stands adjourned, signed aye.